It's times like these that the ordinary citizen longs for the right sense of priorities, the right kind of leadership, the right kind of leaders who will know what is important, what less important in national priorities. Worrying times when a small, poverty-stricken, a tyrannical, headstrong, rogue state decides to go nuclear, insists on cocking a snoot at the world, when the example of North Korea sends shudders down everyone's spine, and which leaves the Middle East not at all on the sidelines of such concerns, because it points to where things could go in this region too, where there is also a state which is determined to go nuclear behind a declared hostile intent towards others in the region. Time indeed when for ordinary Israelis the hope is that their own leaders and that of their very best friend, the leader of the world, the United States, get priorities spot on. Harvard historian Niall Ferguson, in his mighty book Colossus, The Rise and Fall of the American Empire, talks of the threat to America's hegemony coming not from any embryonic rival empire to the west or to the east, but, as he writes, because it may come from the vacuum of power, the absence of a will to power within. With that concern in mind, where is the United States currently in its Middle East policies? Syria's President Bashar al-Assad, in an interview with the BBC, levelled a serious charge, maintaining that the United States has neither the will nor the power to lead a new Middle East peace effort. With due respect, President Assad is wrong. America's will still exists, as does its vision. They're merely in the wrong place. Where Washington is now is in the grips of a search for a valid Iraq exit strategy, a desperate search that is taking place against another drive, a seeming determination to revive a Palestinian-Israeli peace process. Because all of a sudden the international community as a whole seems bent on finding a new Middle East peace order. Like hunters rallying to tally-ho, peacehounds everywhere are flocking to a promised agenda. The scent in their nostrils, the old linkage between resolution of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and opening the way to a new Middle East order. The adage that Arab-Israeli peace is the key to healing all of the world's ills. Yet even the most ardent peace healer, peacemaker, comes away soberly admitting that at present any new peace drive between Israelis and Palestinians seems doomed to fail. And that leaves President Bush with this Middle East problem: how not to lose heart over not yet being able to advance Israeli-Palestinian peace while following the inclination of his other Middle East heart, that in Iraq. But because that heart of US policy has been bleeding so much, there is no longer any prospect for the Bush vision of a liberated, democratic Iraq being able to serve, as he hoped, as a catalyst in the transformation of the entire Middle East. That catalyst now lies elsewhere, in Lebanon. Washington had hoped that the recent Lebanon war would help undermine growing Iranian influence in the region and thus restore the balance of regional power to America's advantage. The outcome of the war was, however, inconclusive, but in its wake, what has become stark is not only in Jerusalem and Washington, but also in most Arab capitals, this imperative: curb Iran. It is this, how to curb Iran, which is indeed the focus of America's efforts in the region. But America's determination to confront Iran's scramble for hegemony in the Middle East continues to be hamstrung by lack of credibility, both because it has been unable to impose a new order on Iraq and because Israel fell short of a clear-cut achievement in Lebanon. And yet, it seems there is still a chance for America to effect radical change in the area, this through dedicating itself to stabilizing the Lebanese situation, by pouring into Lebanon massive resources, financial and political, but not military as in Iraq, by thus starting afresh in challenging the source of terror on its own ground. America could find itself on a more realistic course towards the laying the foundations of what remains President Bush's unshakable conviction, the need to create a more peaceful and a more democratic Middle East. Well, an American-inspired, stable Lebanon, a flourishing Lebanon with Hezbollah subdued, a Lebanon prepared to live in peace with Israel, could on one hand go a long way towards assuaging Israel's security concerns and thus prove to be an important way station to an effective Israeli-Palestinian peace agenda. And secondly, on the other hand, beyond that, it could be vitally important in the containment of Iran's nuclear ambitions. With the war in Lebanon, Israel has de facto become America's most engaged partner against Iran. The challenge now for America's regional policy is to harness its Arab allies in the region, to reinvigorate them with the confidence that America's engagement will indeed contain Iran. All of which harks us back to the challenge posed by North Korea, a portent of bad things to come, and not just for Northeast Asia. As one Israeli intelligence expert puts it, the North Korean nuclear test is a reminder to Israel regarding the right order of priorities that Israel must pursue. Israel, he says, must ensure its existence by retaining its power, by limiting possible conflicts locally through diplomatic compromises, and by making sure that it forges the proper alliances with global and regional powers. Yet, what seems to be the first consideration these days of the government of Ehud Olmert? Its own survival. And that through nothing less than, first and foremost, the expansion of the base of Mr. Olmert's present centre-left religious coalition by taking a sharp lurch towards the hardline right. This by bringing in the Israel Beitenu party headed by Avigdor Lieberman, whose party, which is supported principally by immigrants from the former Soviet Union, was the surprise packet of the elections earlier this year. If the Olmert plan goes through, then his aides say, Lieberman will be appointed as minister responsible for issues of national survival. Well, that's fine enough, except, as the editorial writer of Haaretz puts it, Lieberman is in favor, in both word and deed, of a domineering and uncompromising policy, a policy of using force against an ever-lengthening list of enemies. Ephraim Snare, the Knesset faction head of the Labour Party, presently Olmert's senior coalition partner, puts it cogently. It appears that the Prime Minister is intent on changing not so much the composition of the government as its direction. Worrying times indeed.